Has there ever been a moment in history when art suddenly changed? A day when it seemed to wake up and say, I will never be the same again. When did paintings start to feel? When did eyes begin to show sadness? When did figures step off the wall and begin to live like real people? There is a beginning to all of this. There is a name, Giotto di Bondoni. But here is the question, who was he? A highly educated master from an academy? A nobleman raised in palaces? No. So how did a simple shepherd boy change the entire visual language of Europe? Imagine this, the hills of Tuscany, silence, the sound of sheep. A child sits alone on a rock, drawing with a piece of charcoal. No one tells him what to draw, no one teaches him how, but he is already asking himself, why do paintings look like stone? Why do faces have no feeling? We cry, we laugh, we fear. So why do paintings stay silent? Maybe you've wondered the same thing. Why do old icons all look alike? Why are all faces blank, identical, emotionless? Why are bodies flat, without weight or shadow? Giotto wondered too. And maybe history changed right here. One day the great painter Cimabue passes through the countryside. He sees the boy by the road. He looks at the animals the child has drawn, and he freezes. Why? Because there is something strange in those drawings. The sheep are not just symbols, they are living, moving creatures. Cimabue asks himself, who taught this child? How can he draw like this? Where did this come from? The answer is simple, no one. Now let me ask you, do you always need a teacher to create great art? Or is it enough to really look at the world? Or maybe it takes courage to draw what no one else dares to see. Giotto arrives in the city, and he asks new questions. Why is there no emotion in paintings? Why must people be shown only as cold icons? Aren't they also mothers, fathers, children, loving, fearing, crying humans? So what do you think? Is art only for prayer? Or is it a mirror in which humans finally see themselves? In this video, we will not just talk about a painter. We will search for answers to these questions. When did painting wake up? When did emotion first appear in art? And why, and without Giotto, perhaps there would be no Leonardo, Michelangelo, or Raphael? And the biggest question of all, how did a shepherd boy change the course of art history? The answer lies in the story you're about to hear. Imagine walking into a medieval church. There are paintings on the walls, but they do not speak to you. The faces are the same. The eyes are empty. The bodies are flat, without shadow, without movement. It feels as if the wall itself is painted, cold, carved from salt, without life or warmth. This was the world of medieval painting. Art did not exist for human feelings. It existed for ritual. The goal of painting was not beauty, not storytelling, not emotion. It was to show a holy symbol. The human figure was not drawn as a human being, but as an icon. All faces looked identical. There was no pain, no joy, no real space. The background was often a golden void, as if the real world did not exist at all. Bodies seemed glued to the wall. They had no weight, no gravity, no earth under their feet. When you looked at these paintings, you thought, I can see them, but I cannot feel them. But Europe was changing. Cities were growing, trade was rising, universities were being founded, and people were beginning to think about themselves. The main question was no longer only, who is God? A new question appeared. Who is the human being? And art had no answer yet. The paintings could show, but they could not make you feel. This is why Giotto was needed. He looked behind the wall and saw life. He looked behind the icon and saw a human face. Giotto seemed to say, if a person cries, and they must cry in painting too. If they embrace, and they must embrace on the wall. If they live, art must live as well. What he did looked simple, but for centuries no one had dared to do it. He gave the human figure weight, gravity, real space, emotional expression. The people in his paintings were no longer just sacred symbols. They were real humans, loving, fearing, losing, hoping. Before Giotto, painting existed for prayer. After Giotto, painting began to tell stories. For the first time in centuries, you could see a mother holding her child, people covering their faces in grief, shoulders sagging under sadness, eyes full of emotion. For the first time, there was not only silence on the wall, there was life. That is why art historians say, Giotto did not start the Renaissance, but he opened its door. Without Giotto, perhaps Masaccio, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael would have painted differently, or perhaps would never have existed as we know them. Why was Giotto needed? Because he returned breath to the cold salt wall. He gave paintings a heart again. The language of art changed. A new chapter began. And in that new chapter, there were not only saints, there was the human being. Giotto di Bondone made a revolution in art, not with weapons or power, but with paint on a wall. Before him, figures in paintings looked flat, almost like stickers placed on the surface. They did not stand, sit, lean, or belong to space. Giotto changed this. He gave bodies weight. In his works, knees bend, backs curve, feet press against the earth. For the first time in centuries, people in paintings seemed truly physical, as if gravity was pulling them. They could fall, sit, or embrace. The human body returned to art as something real. But Giotto did more than give bodies weight. He brought back emotion. Medieval faces before him were calm masks, still expressionless, identical. Giotto broke that mask. In his frescoes, people cry, scream, cling to each other, collapse from grief, hesitate, fear, and love. When you look at his Lamentation of Christ, you do not just observe sadness, you feel it. It is not distant, symbolic sorrow. It is human pain that reaches you across centuries. That was new, and it changed everything. Giotto also created real space in painting. Before him, backgrounds were mostly gold emptiness, without depth or environment. There were no rooms, streets, or landscapes, just symbolic backgrounds. Giotto asked himself, if we live in real space, why shouldn't painting have space too? So he painted architecture, rocks, horizons, and interiors. People no longer floated in nowhere. They lived somewhere. This was the first true step toward perspective, the road later perfected by Masaccio, Leonardo, and Raphael. Another part of his revolution was storytelling. Medieval art showed scenes, but Giotto turned scenes into dramas. His compositions are like theater stages. Figures are arranged in groups, gestures direct the eye, all attention moves toward one emotional center. You do not just see what is happening, you feel pulled into it. It is almost cinematic long before cinema existed. Painting stopped being only symbol and became narrative. Perhaps the boldest thing Giotto did was to make holy people human again. In his works, saints do not float above life. They live inside it. They cry, hold their children, doubt, suffer, and love. He did not remove their sacredness. He brought it closer to ordinary people. Viewers could suddenly recognize themselves on the wall. Faith did not become weaker. It became warmer and more human. So Giotto's revolution was not loud. In the city of Padua, there stands a small chapel that changed the history of art. From the outside, it looks simple, almost modest, a brick building, quiet and unassuming. But the moment you step inside, the world shifts. The walls begin to speak, color becomes voice, and you realize why the Scrovegni Chapel is called one of the greatest treasures of the Middle Ages. This chapel is not just a building, it is a book painted on walls, a story wrapped completely around you. Every surface breathes with images created by Giotto di Bondone, more than 700 years ago. The story begins with a man named Enrico Scrovegni. His family was wealthy, powerful, and controversial. His father had been accused of usury, lending money for profit, something condemned by the church at the time. Enrico wanted salvation for his soul and honor for his name. So he decided to build a chapel. Not a grand cathedral, not a massive monument, a small personal chapel, but filled with something eternal. He called Giotto. When Giotto entered the empty interior, it was just bare walls, silent and pale. Within 2 years, he transformed them into one of the most complete visual narratives ever made. More than 40 scenes fill the chapel like frames of an early film. They tell the life of the Virgin Mary, the life of Christ, his miracles, betrayal, death, and resurrection. The viewer does not simply look at them, they walk inside the story. What makes these frescoes extraordinary is not just their beauty, but their humanity. In the scene of the Annunciation, the angel does not appear like a rigid icon. It seems to move, to arrive with purpose. In the nativity scene, Mary bends over her child like a real mother, tired and tender at the same time. In the wedding at Cana, people talk, gesture, react. You can almost hear the room. And then there is perhaps the most famous image in the chapel, the Lamentation. The body of Christ lies across his mother's lap. Around them, people collapse in grief. One woman clutches his feet as if refusing to let him go. Angels in the sky do not float calmly. They scream, twist, and mourn. Nothing here is cold or distant. You feel the weight of loss, the silence after death, the ache of human sorrow. This was something entirely new in art. Giotto's genius in the chapel is not only emotional, it is architectural. For the first time, spaces feel real. Figures occupy volume, not flat surface. Bodies sit, lean, bend. Shadows fall. The world inside the frescoes obeys gravity. The chapel becomes a stage and life unfolds on it with astonishing clarity. Even the ceiling is part of the story. It is painted deep blue, scattered with golden stars, like a night sky opening over the worshiper. It reminds you that this small chapel contains an entire universe. The Scrovegni Chapel is also about something deeper than technique. It is about forgiveness, fear, hope, and the desire to be remembered not only for wealth, but for beauty. Enrico Scrovegni kneels in one of the frescoes, offering the chapel itself to the Virgin Mary, a human being handing over his life, his sins, his future. 700 years later, the colors are still alive. The faces still speak. People still travel across the world to stand in that quiet room and feel that art is not decoration but language, a language that goes straight to the heart. The chapel is small, but inside it, a revolution happened. Painting learned how to feel, how to breathe, how to be human again. And that is why the Arena Chapel in Padua is not just an old building. It is the place where the Renaissance began to wake up. He was one of the first true storytellers in the history of art. Before him, paintings were mainly symbols, holy figures standing stiffly, looking forward, surrounded by gold. They were meant to be read, not felt. Giotto changed that forever. He did not just paint scenes, he staged moments. He built emotions. He created stories that unfold right before your eyes. Look closely at his paintings and frescoes, and something remarkable happens. You begin to notice how every figure has a role. No one is placed randomly. Someone turns away, another leans forward, someone else covers their face, someone reaches out with trembling hands. These gestures are not decorative. They are language. They tell you what each person thinks and feels without a single word. Giotto understood something incredibly modern. The viewer must be pulled into the scene. In his works, people are arranged like actors on a stage. Your eye is guided, almost like a camera moving through a film. First, you see the central action, a touch, an embrace, a body being lowered to the ground. Then you notice the people around it reacting in shock, grief, anger, or love. The story grows wider and deeper the longer you look. He also mastered silence. Many of Giotto's scenes feel quiet, but not empty. It is the silence after something important has happened. In the Lamentation, the world seems to stop. The curve of the rocks leads your eyes directly to the body of Christ. Around him, people collapse in grief. Some cling to him desperately. Others turn their faces away because the pain is too great. Above them, angels fly in agony, their mouths open in unheard cries. You are no longer just looking at a religious image. You are standing inside a moment of human loss. Giotto was innovative in how he showed relationships. People in his paintings do not simply stand beside each other. They interact. They touch shoulders, lean on one another, whisper, accuse, comfort, or betray. The connection between them is visible and emotional. You can tell who is afraid, who is guilty, who is hopeful, who is heartbroken. Without text, without sound, he makes you understand the psychology of the scene. He also used space as part of storytelling. For the first time, buildings and landscapes were not just backgrounds. They shaped the drama. A doorway frames a betrayal. A wall traps characters in tension. A rocky slope pulls your gaze down towards sorrow. Space became emotion. Space became narrative. Perhaps the most modern thing about Giotto is that he understood the audience. He knew that the people looking at his frescoes were not scholars. They were ordinary men and women. So he told stories in a way every person could understand, with gesture, expression, movement, and heart. You don't need to know theology to feel what is happening. You only need to be human. Giotto showed that a painting could do what words and sermons sometimes could not: make you feel the story. He turned images into scenes, saints into characters, walls into living theater. In many ways, he was a director centuries before cinema existed. So when you stand before one of Giotto's works, do not just glance at it and walk away. Stay for a moment. Watch how people look at each other. Notice who is closest, who is isolated, who cannot bear to watch. Follow the direction of hands and eyes. The story is there, waiting. Giotto's greatest innovation was simple and profound. He believed that art should not only be seen, it should be experienced. And once he painted that way, Western art would never return to silence again. Giotto's world was made of walls, plaster, and color. Yet from those simple materials, he changed how humans tell stories. After him, painting was no longer just decoration for churches. It became a language of emotion, a stage where grief, love, fear, and hope could finally appear with human faces. Today, when we stand before his frescoes, more than 7 centuries later, the colors may have faded a little, but the feelings have not. The tears are still wet. The embraces are still warm. The silence between figures still speaks. We realize that his art is not about the distant past. It is about us. Giotto showed that saints had hearts, mothers had tired hands, friends felt loss, and even angels could cry. He taught artists after him, and all of us, that a story is powerful only when it is human. From his brush began the path that would lead to the Renaissance, to realistic space, to living characters, to the art we know today. So in the end, Giotto's legacy is not only in museums and chapels. It is in every painting that makes you stop, feel, and think. It is in every moment when an image seems alive. His revolution did not shout. It simply whispered one truth across centuries. Art breathes when people in it are allowed to live. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your like and comment really help the video reach more people. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.